There's something that happens when you arrive on a truly beautiful island. The pace of life, the one that you didn't even realise you were rushing through, starts to shift. Time loosens its grip, the noise fades, and in its place comes a kind of quiet you can feel in your chest. It's not silence exactly. There's the hush of the sea, the call of the birds, the wind brushing through the palm fronds. But it's the kind of quiet that feels like magic. Mornings arrive gently with golden light pouring across the sand. Afternoons drift by in a haze of salt water and sunshine. There's no rush to be anywhere, no need to do anything other than take it all in. The colours are sharper, the air is cleaner, and even your thoughts feel clearer somehow. And maybe that's the gift of a place like this. It gives you back the simple, the beautiful things that we often forget that we need. Time, stillness, and the space to breathe. Welcome to If These Trees Could Talk.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we are recording on today, which is Wanneroo land, and also all of the lands that you are listening to this episode from. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture, and we are grateful to share this space today.
It is one of the standout experiences of my life. I completely forgot that I had snorkeling anxiety. I've got goosebumps now telling you about it. I literally lost my mind. If you could design it yourself, it still would not be as pretty as the real thing. Today, while we're here with the rain falling outside and it's all dark and gloomy, we're going to go to a tropical island.
Yay.
And it's like a proper travel episode. So there's like a little side quest that,
of course,
but it's only one little thing and the rest of it's really positive. I thought maybe you might need a palate cleanser after the last couple of weeks.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So today we are heading to Lord Howe Island. Floating serenely in the Tasman Sea, about 700 kilometres northeast of Sydney, Lord Howe Island is one of Australia's most treasured national wonders. A UNESCO World Heritage listed island, it offers an extraordinary blend of tropical and temperate marine life, lush forests, dramatic volcanic peaks, and a sense of untouched tranquility that's becoming increasingly rare to find in any Australian holiday destination. The waters surrounding Lord Howe are protected as part of the Lord Howe Island Marine Park, a vibrant underwater sanctuary shaped by the meeting of warm tropical currents and cooler temperate flows. This unique mix creates a haven for biodiversity with more than 450 species of fish and around 90 species of coral, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. One of the most enchanting ways to experience this underwater world is aboard a glass-bottom boat tour, where you'll glide across the crystal clear lagoon gazing down at the corals and schools of colourful fish. For a more immersive experience, snorkeling lets you drift through the marine wonderland, often alongside green sea turtles, reef sharks, and playful rainbow-coloured wrasse. Ned's Beach, a favourite for families and nature lovers alike, is part of a special purpose zone within the marine park. It's a protected no-take area where visitors can hand-feed fish in shallow waters, an unforgettable up-close encounter with the marine life. Lord Howe Island boasts the world's southernmost coral reef, wrapping around the turquoise lagoon that invites swimming, kayaking, paddleboarding and snorkeling. Seabirds nest along the shores, and beneath the surface, vibrant coral gardens teem with life. Diving enthusiasts are in for a treat with over 60 dive sites around the island, many still unexplored. Around Ball's Pyramid, the tallest sea stack in the world, you'll encounter dramatic underwater landscapes, massive fan corals, rare marine creatures like the mesmerising Spanish dancer nudibranch and the elusive Ballina angelfish. On land, Lord Howe is just as captivating. Mount Gower, rising 875 metres above sea level, offers one of Australia's best day hikes. A challenging guided trek rewarded with breathtaking views and encounters with rare plants and bird life. If you're after something a little more gentle, a stroll through the Valley of Shadows under the canopy of banyan trees and kentia palms, or watch the red-tailed tropic birds perform elegant aerial dances off Malabar Hill. Fishing is another unforgettable way to connect with the island's natural bounty. Commercial fishing is banned within the marine park, making the local fish populations abundant. Strict regulations, sanctuary zones, and the fact that none of their fish is used for export off the island help ensure sustainability for generations to come. So we travelled to Lord Howe Island in 2015.
10 years ago, mate.
I know.
That's insane.
I know. It feels like I should probably do another trip.
Well, it's going to be on my list after this for sure.
That was the whole point of this episode. I just thought a nice little travel diary. And I've been trying to figure out a way to tie this in to, theme it with the podcast because I can't just give you a totally lovely story.
Yes, you can.
I thought maybe we can put a couple of travel diary ones in there in amongst just so people aren't sad every single week.
I love that.
Getting to Lord Howe Island is actually part of the adventure. I had never been on a small aircraft before, and you take one of those Qantas -8 aircrafts, which is like 36 seats.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little bit nervous about that, but then we had the best flight attendant. He was the campus guy. He was like encouraging us to drink. He was like he was in for the party as much as we were. He was excited about us going on holiday. So he just made the whole experience really, really wonderful. And flying in to Lord Howe Island, which is actually still part of New South Wales, sort of in line with Port Macquarie, and flying in there was literally like a scene from a movie.
Lost, was it like Lost?
It was as pretty as Lost. That was a good reference, Megan. Well done. You'll see why in a second. So you come in, -8s don't go as high as a normal aeroplane. So most of the time you can see the ocean as you're flying out there, and you come in over the lagoon, and it is literally like, it reminded me of that movie Blue Lagoon when
I
we were
remember
kids.
that. Yeah.
Like that we shouldn't have been allowed to watch,
Yeah.
but we were. And you go from this like deep blue ocean to this crystal aqua lagoon area, and it's incredible that it's real, like that it just occurred itself. It's not a set, because it is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. So we fly in and we land on the runway.
So you sent me a few island photos before today so I could prepare, perhaps make a virtual tour, which I will. So have a look for that in the show notes.
Yes.
It didn't look like a very long runway.
No, so it's 886 metres, which a normal commercial airport's runway is generally between 2,500 and 4,000 metres, depending on the weather. Like, so if it's somewhere that's particularly windy, they'll have a longer runway.
I'm imagining Lord Howe Island is one of those places that could get windy.
Yeah. The runway literally runs the full width of the island in that section. So the runway starts at the lagoon, heads across the island to the beach on the other side. And that's the only section of flat land, because everywhere else is mountainous. So that was their one choice. And that is directly at the base of these two incredible mountains, Mount Gower and Mount Lynchburg. The mountains generate their own weather, and you can get on a flight at Sydney And the weather station report can be that it's perfectly sunny and fine. And then you get 3/4 of the way there and the weather around the mountains has generated clouds or wind picks up, and these small planes only carry enough fuel for a pilot to attempt landing twice
Oh.
before they have to turn around and either head back to Port Macquarie or Sydney, because there's nowhere close by that they can get fuel. So there's only 2 options to land, and it's a very basic airport. So there's no tricky navigation systems. It's literally, you have to be able to see the runway to land on it. And those mountains, while we were there, would change 15 times a day, where you would be on the beach and you could see the whole of the mountains, and then 10 minutes later, it would be completely covered in fog and cloud. So it gave me a real appreciation for the pilots' jobs in this place. So we fly in and we land on the runway, and we're getting off our little Qantas plane, and I look over and there's a private jet on the runway. And we come around the front of the plane, and as I'm walking, and I notice these 2 people, and they look familiar to me, and I have a bit of a closer look. And it was Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
No.
Yes.
How do I not know this story from 10 years ago?
The reason that we run into my good friends Blake and Ryan while we were on the tarmac was that Blake had just finished shooting a movie at Lord Howe, which is called The Shallows. And she plays a girl called Nancy, who's a medical student who's surfing in Mexico, but it's not Mexico, it's Ned's Beach. And she gets attacked by a great white shark. So it's kind of a mix between, I'd say, Jaws and 127 Hours. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a mix between those two.
I don't want to watch that.
Nah, and sorry to my good friend Blake, it wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. I did watch it because I was committed. I had seen her there and I had been to that beach.
Yep.
So the scenery is beautiful, but the whole movie is literally just her on this beach with this shark. I have watched some of the CGI stuff and how they made it all work, and it is incredible because the shark is very realistic, and you probably won't want to go for a swim for a little while after if you do choose to watch it. But the scenery is absolutely incredible, and the cinematography is really quite good as well. So I could get through it for that.
So you're now running a travel podcast and movie review podcast.
Yeah. So there's about 300 people that live on the island, and most of those people rely on tourism for their income. So there's this really amazing little community effort. So a little bus comes to pick you up because there's no cars. Like the people who live there, some of them have cars, but tourists just get around the island on bikes or by foot. You can literally ride from one end of the island to the other in an hour or two, depending on how many times you stop to look at stuff, if you may. This person just comes and picks you up from the airport, and all of your flights will say that you get airport transfers, but they'll pick everybody up. And the man who wasn't from our hotel, he just picked us all up and kind of took us on this little drive around and was telling us about all these key points and stuff. It was so awesome. He had told us when he took us around just to have a look at Ned's Beach that a few days before there was a giant mechanical shark laying across the top of the beach, which was pretty amazing. So we got dropped off and we headed down to hire some bikes and some snorkeling gear. And I was a little bit nervous about the snorkeling aspect because I'm an anxious person, and the whole breathing and the underwater thing and stuff I wasn't great at. So I'd practiced in the bath a few times, not with really great results. So we got our bikes, we got our snorkeling gear, and I said to the lady at the snorkeling spot, can you recommend somewhere where I can go that's, not crazy, that's not too deep, where I can just have a bit of a go before we go out on the snorkeling tour the following day, which was right out in the lagoon. And she said, yeah, just head down to Old Settlement Beach, which was only a couple of 100 meters up the road. So we pedal off on our bikes. We get down on this beach where there is literally no people. We didn't pass a person between where we picked up the bikes and getting to that beach. And we walked down and we had a bit of a look around, and we'd bought a GoPro just before we left. So we had a bit of a play with that and dived in. And I was having a bit of a practice and doing not too bad. And then Scott called out to me because he'd stepped on a sea urchin on the beach. It didn't like go right into his foot, but it kind of stung him. And so I race up to the beach and I'm having a look at this thing and deciding if he needs medical assistance or not in the most remote place that we've ever visited. And while we're standing there, I hear this little behind me, and I turn around and there's a green sea turtle with its head poked out of the water looking at us. I've got goosebumps now telling you about it. I literally lost my mind. So I dived in. I had the GoPro. I didn't know how to work it, so I just turned it on and hoped for the best. And when I got in there was 3 sea turtles, and we swam with them for 40 minutes. They were not scared of us. They were happy to just cruise along, and they were eating the seagrass. They didn't like us to get too close to them, obviously, but like I was this far away, like from you to me, from this turtle, and I completely forgot that I had snorkeling anxiety. And it was gone. I did not think about it once. It is one of the coolest experiences that I have ever had in my entire life.
I feel like some of the power of that story might have been taken away by the fact that we still haven't found out if Scott's okay from stepping on the sea urchin.
Oh, yeah, he's in the water. Like the sea urchin was gone. My anxiety was gone. His sea urchin pain was probably still there, but he just didn't care about it anymore. So we were literally on this beach on a tropical island with more turtles than there was humans. Like that's pretty high on my things that I never thought I would experience least. So we spent some time with them. It was so great. Got out, and from Old Settlement Beach, it kind of is at the northern end of the island, and it curves round, and it's sort of got big hills and stuff up behind it. But from Old Settlement Beach, you can like look down up to the big mountains at the southern end. I've got some photos. I'll put them on the website. I'll put them on the socials. They're not great photos because they were from a long time ago, and we took a lot of them on the GoPro, but you'll be able to see what I could see. It is just stunning. So I was on like the most unbelievable natural high, and we were packing up our stuff to go back to our room, and we noticed some plane wreckage on the hill up behind us. So we went to have a little bit of a look at that, and we found out that that plane had come from Rathmines.
Which is 30 minutes from your place.
20. I Google mapped it.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So this is where our little side quest story is going to come into my travel diary episode. And I'll tell you a little bit about the history of Rathmines and these planes. Rathmines, which is a small town on the shores of Lake Macquarie, the largest saltwater lake in New South Wales and one of the biggest in Australia, covering around 110 square kilometres. Located just south of Newcastle and about 20 minutes from my house. It's a peaceful place, and we as a family and with you guys and your parents and stuff have spent a lot of time in and around this place. We've got family who live in the area. So
hi, Annie Lee.
And I had seen those old halls and stuff at Rathmines. Do you know the ones that I'm talking about?
Is this the Catalina thing?
It's the Catalina thing.
Yeah.
Because I think they're like a church. They belong to a church group now, but they've got that old war-y mess hall kind of accommodation feel about them. So I've always been a bit intrigued. I learned heaps about it after this.
You just had to travel hours away to find out about it.
I did, from something that was 20 minutes from home. So back in 1938, the Royal Australian Air Force set up in Rathmines because of the calm waters of Lake Macquarie were perfect for flying boats like the Catalinas. These planes weren't fast, but they were tough and had incredible range. They could fly for hours, often through the night, and get into places other aircrafts couldn't. The Catalinas from Rathmines played a huge role in Australia's efforts in the Pacific during the war, everything from mine-laying missions to search and rescue and reconnaissance. By the time the Catalinas were in full swing, Rathmines was a busy hub with around 3,000 people stationed there. When the war ended, Rathmines slowly started winding down. By the 1950s, the base was decommissioned, but it was during this period after the war that the cats became a big part of Lord Howe Island's history. Catalina A24-381 from the number 11 squadron at the Rathmines Air Base was the wreckage that we spotted above Old Settlement Beach. The tragedy was recorded as the highest loss of RAAF personnel during peacetime. The incident also remains the island's greatest disaster.
You couldn't help yourself, could you?
I couldn't, but it was there and it's part of the story, so it fits our brand. So I thought I should probably include it. Not give you everything that you want.
Where's the romance, Shannon?
There's none in this one, sorry.
Is it you two snorkeling?
Yeah, there is some nice romantic
lovely.
photos of us snorkeling.
I don't really need stories of my
We
brother
probably
being
kissed
romance.
on a beach
Ew!
too.
Ew!
The first cat to come to Lord Howe Island was for a medical evacuation in May 1942. Soon more of these camouflage black cats came to the island for a bit of badly needed rest and recovery after dangerous search and rescue missions, anti-submarine patrols, and convoy guard duties. The night in 1943, the slow-flying A24-381 and her crew met their fate. They were on a navigation excursion from Rathmines. The aircraft had reached the island and was headed back west towards home at Lake Macquarie. While attempting an emergency landing at about 7:30 p.m, the circling flying boat lost power, then clipped a ridge at the back of Malabar Hill and crashed. 7 of the RAAF crew died that night and 2 others were saved when they were dragged from the blazing aircraft fragments. Lord Howe Island resident Roy Wilson was later awarded the George Medal, which is the civilian equivalent to the Victoria Cross, for his rescues. About 20 minutes into the return flight, a serious fuel leak occurred, probably in the ruptured line above the engineer's head, soaking the crew in fuel. The aircraft crew immediately decided to return to Lord Howe Island and land on its lagoon. With so much petrol vapour around, the crew dared not transmit a distress message because of the risk of a generator sparking and igniting the fuel. But then, trying to cross the island from east to west, and about to descend into the darkness of the lagoon, the cat scraped its belly on the top of a basalt ledge. There was a shower of sparks before the cat exploded into flames, tumbling down the tree-lined slope above Old Settlement Beach at the northern end of the island. The tail section broke off, throwing 2 men out of the inferno as the fuselage of the 19-metre-long aeroplane disintegrated. Today, 6 decades later, at least 30 pieces of sizable aluminium wreckage, including 2 large radial engines, litter the crash site, starkly visible in the clearing above the beach. There are also plaques and an impressive Catalina propeller monument that were erected in 1998 to mark the 50th anniversary of the crash. Much further up, along a narrow walking trail on the spine of Malabar Ridge itself, is a special, almost hidden monument, easily missed on its high rock shelf. It marks the exact spot of the tragedy. The deeply shocked islanders had loved the magnificent old RAAF cats. In the 1940s, such aircraft had paved the way for island tourism before being later replaced by more modern flying boats. This unusual big boat service in time would become the world's longest running and last such service. The last commercial flying boat then left Lord Howe Island Lagoon on September 10th, 1974, after an island airstrip was finally built. As you can imagine, it was a pretty sobering experience to have this really amazing afternoon with the turtles and then be standing amongst the plane wreckage with the people that's names were on that plaque coming from places like Toronto and Wangi, which for us hit pretty close to home. We did an island tour a couple of days later with Chase and Time, and our guide was super knowledgeable about the plane crash and the history of the cats on Lord Howe Island. And he talked about how they would land and they'd have like mail and different things from the mainland, and everybody would sort of rush down out of the town to go to the lagoon to see whoever was there. And it really kind of gave this whole bigger perspective about the isolation of the place and these people living in a remote way, and these planes being the only link to the mainland. So to have such a big tragedy occur would have been pretty huge for the people of the island at the time. That man on that tour taught us a heap of stuff about the weather station on the island and the contracts so they bring in skilled labour from the mainland and you have to apply for the position. So the local school teacher would have to apply. And then I think it's a 2-year contract with then the option to stay additional time if that's what you want to do. So things like school teachers, mechanics, doctors all work on that basis, people at the weather station. And I think there's some scientific-based research stuff that goes on there too. But like moving to the island is literally impossible unless you take one of those places. Most of the people who still live on the island today are 5th and 6th generation from the original settlers that were the first people to actually live there.
So there's no traditional Aboriginal custodians. When was Lord Howe first discovered?
So no, there is no Aboriginal custodians of that land. Lord Howe was first settled in 1834 and it was by 3 couples. I think one of them might have had a Maori wife. So there was some New Zealand links there as well. But there's some really amazing stories about how those people settled. And again, I'm trying to give you one that's less than 40 minutes.
You haven't, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I like that I don't feel sick at the end too.
Yeah, the story of them setting up that little settlement and how they survived, and they made income by growing fruits and vegetables to sell to passing ships as they come through, and had quite a good life there.
How brave.
So amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this man was amazing and he taught us so much stuff. I really loved how they recycle all their glass and it goes into like a pebbling machine, and then that's how all the paths and stuff are made on the island. It was just so interesting to see how this small remote community runs and not having access to the immediate things like that we do here. They have a small grocery store, but like if you need bobby pins to go out that night and the shop doesn't have them and you don't have them at home, it's just not going to happen for you. So things that we take for granted, if they're planning a project or something, they have to plan months in advance to organise that stuff and get it shipped to the ship. So their main deliveries now come from Port Macquarie on a large ship. So they can ring up and get a Coles order and have it delivered to the ship, but then they have to pay for the square meterage on the ship on top of that grocery order as well. So they take really seriously the amount of stuff that they get brought in, and they're not doing it in ways that aren't sustainable for the island. So they make use of a lot of their waste. If the things that they're growing are coming out of date, they'll preserve fruit and that type of stuff. So
isn't it incredible that such a small group of people can achieve things that the rest of the world can't achieve just because it has to be a priority? There's no other way.
I listened to an interview this week while I was researching this. It's a podcast made in New Zealand with people who live in a small island community. And what they do is interview people from other small island communities about things that work really great for their island, and they swap knowledge of what's good and what things have worked for them. And it might be about raising bees in an island community because of pollination issues, or it might be around pest eradication, or engaging community in progress for the island, which can be hard in a small community who are very committed to the space that they live. And it was fascinating listening to some of the issues that they'd faced over the years, and rats were a huge one because Lord Howe has a lot of specific species that are endemic to the island.
Do we have to talk about rats in every episode?
It was a big thing for these guys. And I think it was 2019 that they finally got rid of all the rats. In the beginning, Lord Howe, before anyone lived there, the people on the ships that were travelling the Tasman Sea just dumped a whole heap of goats on this island and pigs and left them there. So when they were travelling, they could call in and just kill a pig and kill a goat. So they had food to make it the rest of the way to Sydney or Tasmania or wherever they were sailing to. Can you imagine? Like, why would you do that?
Hang on, I've got a button for this.
But why did you do that?
They just didn't know.
They didn't know.
They didn't know.
But can you imagine now if like you just found this really beautiful island that's covered in palm trees and amazing beaches and then just turn up and go, oh, yeah, let's just whack a heap of feral pigs on here. That'll be great.
And it probably still is happening in a lot of places around the world when we do know better.
Yeah. Anyway.
So there's still all these wild animals there?
No. So they've eradicated all of them because the island has a wood hen, which is a very cute little... It almost looks like a lyrebird without a tail is how I would describe it. It's not a chicken. It's a very cute little bird that's a ground-dwelling bird. So it was really vulnerable to predators like pigs and rats, which killed off huge numbers of the population. So the way to solve that was to get rid of the rats and the pigs, which they've done successfully, which good on them.
Mm.
The other issue with the rats was that Kentia palms, which back in the early 1900s was one of the, like it was a really celebrated indoor plant for people all over the world. I think it was really popular with the Europeans. So Lord Howe Island has masses of Kentia palms. So they started exporting them from the island, and you would have been hard pressed in, you know, the 60s and 70s to find a house in Australia that didn't have a Kentia palm inside of it. It was like one of the most popular indoor plants. So all of them, all over the world, came from Lord Howe Island, but the rats were eating the seeds. The export of those palms was huge to create income for the island. So it's not just a place that you go if you love nature or beaches or, you know, there is some really incredible things to be learnt there as well. And the museum, which is in the kind of little township area, is fascinating. And it has some of the, they're a stick creature that they believed had been extinct for like a very, very long time. And they found them living on Ball's Pyramid, which is that sea stack that's just off the island. Yeah, they thought that this thing was completely extinct and bam, still living on Lord Howe. The standout experience, though, was snorkeling in the lagoon. And I haven't been to the Barrier Reef. That is on our list for this year. But I could not, even in my wildest dreams, have understood what this was going to be like. It was so amazing. Again, snorkeling anxiety completely went away because diving in was like literally entering an aquarium. There's butterfly fish and angelfish and parrotfish, and there's a thing that they call the stinky rats, which is a pretty mean name because it's the most beautiful fish that I've ever seen. It's pink and yellow and blue and green. Like it looks like a rainbow. There was some reef sharks, but I was okay with that.
Did you see them?
Yeah, yeah.
And you were okay with that, but you're not okay with putting a snorkel on in the bar.
Yeah, I'm strange. I'm wired differently, Megan. The coral was amazing, and my favourite was the staghorn coral, which is like a purpley colour, and there was like big sections where it was grouped together and it literally looked like underwater fields of lavender.
Coral's fascinating.
Well, in my head, I thought this coral it looked like a bush to me, like in my head, and I've got photos of it, which I'll put up. it literally looked like round bushes of lavender. And in my head, they were like moving with the water. There's a photo of Scott swimming over the top of it, and it's just completely purple. The whole background of the photo is completely purple. Yeah, when I looked it up last night so I could get like a better quality picture of it, it is literally, it's a hard coral. So it wasn't swaying but it looks like it's soft and inviting, and I wanted to smell it. But that obviously doesn't work with the snorkel on. But it was just magnificent. I loved every second of it. And that afternoon, going back to the people being on the island for the movie, Scott does all the research for our trips, right? So I just turn up. I pack the bag and I turn up, and he knows all of the places and he watches hours of YouTube videos and stuff before we go places.
Scots are good like that.
Yeah, they are. They're so good. So he had found out about this lady on the island who made her own sausages, and he was really into sausage making himself at the time. And she had all of these different flavors. We are not built for bike riding, which anybody who knows us knows. It's not something that we do generally as a fun way to pass the time.
Does anyone?
I don't know. People do. They generally wear Lycra. We're not those people. But this shop was sort of at the top, the back of the island, so you had to ride up this big hill. And each day as we were heading back to our room, we'd buy a 6-pack of beer at the little town shop, which is quite expensive because it has to come on a boat, all of that stuff. Totally understand. So we'd just buy a 6-pack that we'd take back to our room, and we'd have that like on the little patio outside or in the garden when we got back each night. And we had our 6-pack of beer in the basket of the bike, because that's all we could carry. Like, you couldn't go and buy a carton because you're on a bike, right? And we ride up to the top of this massive hill to get to this shop to buy the sausages. And when we get there, she like only had a few different types, which was fine. We took everything that she had because all of the people who'd been there filming the movie had like literally bought everything out of all of the shops, and they were waiting on the ship to come. And so we talked to her about the beer saga, and she said, just go down to the bowling club and get it. So all of the alcohol on the island is managed by the Lord Howe Island Board, which is what we would say is like a council, right? But they manage all of the things on the island. She said, just go down to the bowling club and you can buy a whole carton. It'll be heaps cheaper, like if you're here for a couple of days. And we're like, oh, we can't, like our motel is like halfway up this hill that we've just ridden up. Like, there's no way we can ride our bikes with a whole carton of beer. And she's like, just take my car. And we're like, we can't do that. And she's like, yeah, just take it. And Scott's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, do you want me to leave like my wallet and stuff, license? And she's like, you can't steal it. Where are you going to put it? So we go down to the bowling club, and when we get there, there's a sign on the door. So it's not, there wasn't people working there at the time that we turned up, but it's just left unlocked. And they say, just write your name and what you take and where you're staying and your room number, and they just bill it back to your room. So you're allowed to just go in there and get whatever you want out of their fridges and cool rooms and take it back to your hotel.
Love that.
I love this
There's
place.
still so much good in the world.
Yeah. They have a very low crime rate on Lord Howe. That was amazing. And we went back, got our bike and headed back, and then we had heaps of beer and we didn't have to ride up the hill with it anymore, which was great. But the last day before we headed home, we still hadn't done Ned's Beach. So we headed over there, and it was a bit rainy and overcast, like the other days had been really lovely. And we got down there, again, not one person. This is a beach where they film movies because it's so beautiful, and there was no people. So we go in, and you're allowed to feed the fish there, right? We go into the little shelter bit where there's like a little dispenser for the food, and you just put like a couple of bucks in. It's like them, you know, like the
Gumball machine.
Gumball machine.
I could tell from your mime.
Okay, good. And it spits out some of the food, and you just walk out into the water, which is exactly what we did. And I was expecting like a couple of fish, right? The ball of fish around us would fill the studio. And they're not like cute little fish. They're like big fish. like silver drummers and spangled emperors.
Like that scene in Nemo where they have to swim down.
Yes. The fish that are living there on the reef off Ned's Beach all know that people come and get the food and feed them. So when someone goes into the water, everybody swims in to have a look. So we're standing in sort of chest deep water and it's overcast and we are surrounded by fish that Scott would die to catch. Like they're like big fish, like the length of your arm.
She's miming again. They're very big.
And they're like banging into your legs and they don't care. Like they're not being polite. They just want the food. So you're throwing out the bits of the food. We got some amazing shots on the GoPro here and we were pretty excited about it. Like it was amazing. Then sort of halfway through, we started to remember that there'd been a mechanical shark on that beach. Just, and Ned's Beach is on the ocean side of the island. So it's like where the bigger sharks could come. It's not like the lagoon where it's protected. It got darker because the rain clouds were moving in and we couldn't see as well. We could still see the fish. There was lots of them. But we're like, is this starting to feel a bit sharky? And Scott's like, yeah, it is. So I wish we had the drone then. I wish we could have got a photo of this beach with nobody else on it and just these two idiots standing chest deep in water surrounded by this huge bait ball. Like we were the centre.
This is the romance story I was after.
This is how we do romance. It's just shark chasing or elephant seal chasing or random bird colonies and stuff. That's how we do romance. I'm not allowed to light a candle at dinner time. I've got to find it where I can.
So he still likes to see his food like when he was 15?
Yeah, he still really likes to see his food. It is a place where you have to go once in your life. Flights are expensive. They're around sort of between $1,000 and $1,500 in peak season. They can be more each way. Like you can literally fly to Los Angeles for the same price you can fly to Lord Howe Island. But when you understand the complexities of getting there and having specialist pilots that can operate that plane, and often they leave Sydney and then they can't land. So they have to turn around and take all those people back. And then the people who are still on the island that were supposed to fly back on that plane can't get on that plane. That's what I was really hoping for that last day. I was like, please don't be able to land. But they could. It was a bit sad. But it was just the most surreal experience of my life. I remember riding along the lagoon through the roads and it was just a canopy of palms. Like if you could design it yourself, it still would not be as pretty as the real thing.
That's a good quote. We're going to put that into the teasers.
So I think what makes it truly special though, and especially for me who really loves creatures and not the humans, with only 300 islanders and only 400 tourist beds, that means there's only 700 people on the island at any given time. So you can have a whole beach or you can be hiking a trail through a forest and literally not come across another person, which makes it truly special because it's one of the few holiday destinations where you have that. I think for me and you, talking about simplifying your life this year, in our worlds where we are so busy and we're connected to our phones and technology, to go somewhere, there's no phone service on Lord Howe. So you can't take a phone call. You have to go to the phone box.
What is that even?
It was great. We called the kids from the phone box because we didn't take the kids. So it was just me and Scott.
That was going to be one of my questions. I'm doing the maths here. Where was your baby?
He was with your mum.
Yeah, Mum. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I am just a little bit sad that it's taken 10 years for me to hear these amazing stories.
It's strange that I haven't made you sit and let me lecture you about them before. It is one of the standout experiences of my life. Scott often says at the beginning of the year, like when we're planning our big trip, where do you want to go this year? And my first answer is always Lord Howe Island. But when we're doing that with the whole family, it does make it a difficult achievement financially. And I'm not saying it's not worth it. 100% it is worth every cent to go and experience this place. But when we do a couple of big holidays a year, our budget doesn't quite stretch far enough to just do 3 days that cost us the same as 3 weeks. So we will go back, and I would love to take the big kids and their babies and Charlie and do a family holiday there somewhere in the future. In a world that's always so busy, Lord Howe offers something that we don't even realise we're missing. Space to breathe, room to wander, no crowds, no traffic, no rush, just nature, quiet, and a deep sense of calm. And maybe that's the real magic of Lord Howe.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of If These Trees Could Talk. If you would like to access more about the places or information included in today's topic, please visit our website ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. If you would like to follow us on our adventures, check us out on Facebook or Insta. Our creative writer is Shannon Walters, and our podcast is produced at Bellevue Studio in the Hunter Valley with audio production by Megan Anderson. We love to hear your feedback, so please rate and review, and if you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We look forward to you joining us for our next adventure.